You are listening to the Wannabe Collective, your new variety podcast featuring every fandom that you could possibly think of. On the Wannabe Collective, all wannabes are welcome. Welcome, all fellow wannabes. Welcome to the show. You are listening to the Wannabe Collective from Wannabe Critic Productions. I am one of your hosts, Gabriel Fast, and today it is a very, very special episode. We are continuing the series, Who Would Win? And as the person I have with me, as always, for this very segment, Tristan Twitchell, has joined us yet again. Tristan, how are you?
Hey, Gabe. Hey, guys. I'm great. How are you, man?
I'm doing good. It's not like we just didn't spend like an hour talking about Halo again. You know what I mean? It's turning into a thing. It's like whenever we can make it happen, it's always like, can you record two?
Just pound it out.
Can you record two in one? Can we just make it happen? You know. So I'm very excited to have another episode. This isn't one that anyone requested, but if you want to request a matchup, you're more than welcome to email us at thewannabecollective@gmail.com and let us know how we're doing. You can also find us on Twitter you can find me on Twitter at thewannabecritic, and you can also look up Wannabe Critic Productions on Twitter to give us your dream matchups. And here's the deal. We talk about this every time. There was this little YouTube channel back in the day called Screw Attack, and they had this series. You might have heard of it, and I think it is literally just the Death Battle YouTube channel now. You might have heard of it. It was called Death Battle, right? And they have gotten so many things wrong so many times, and I can't stand it. So I thought I had to, have my own spin on it. That way someone that has the same fervor as I can listen to our show and be like, wow, they got that so wrong. You know what I mean? That's always the best thing.
Oh, yeah, I want haters. Bring them on.
Oh, yeah, it's the best. I love your tears taste delicious. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the best. So here today we have a very interesting a matchup, and Tristan, do you feel like you need to catch up? I mean, do you want to catch up? Do you want to tell people what you've been doing, or do you just want to get?
It's the fight.
Yeah, I'm ready. Yeah, same here.
Fight.
No one cares. Like, they listen to this show, they know who we are. Whatever. So today's fight, ladies and gentlemen, in the green corner we have the 5,000-year-old immortal elf himself, Legolas from the Lord of the Rings franchise. In the other green corner, we have Green Arrow. Oliver Queen, Green Arrow. You might have heard of him. He's from a little publishing house called Detective Comics. And we asked the age-old question, who would win? And me and Tristan, it's a very interesting episode because we didn't really pregame this at all. We went in, we were kind of talking about a few arguments, and I said, you know what, we're usually on the same page. Like, let's go into one episode blind and just see where it goes from there. We'll just kind of make it up as it goes. So Tristan and I literally have no thoughts as to how the other one feels on this particular subject right now. But I do have to ask, just to get it started. Tristan, who would win? Legolas or Green Arrow?
This one's really tough.
It really
I really feel that way.
I've gone back and forth several times. I know,
like, everyone has preconceived notions and everybody feels one way or the other. But it's like every time you think, okay, well, boom. Then you're like, well, boom.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, boom. And you're like, but boom.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? Like, that might be stupid.
No, it's not. I've been struggling with this one. Like, it's been...
Yeah.
Yeah, so do you, and of course,
okay, can I just go one thing?
Yeah, I want to hear it.
I wanted to tell you this. I asked two people their opinion. Two people I respect who, one person doesn't really know a whole heck of a lot about this situation, and the other one does. This particular matchup. And both of them gave me a response of, well, one said Legolas wins because of his adaptability, and then the other one said Green Arrow wins because of his adaptability.
Ooh.
So that I think shows what this episode is about.
Yeah.
I think that's the perfect frame for the episode.
Yeah, and
who's more adaptable.
Yeah, I think
because they're both dangerous dudes.
They really are. And I mean, you made a comment, I think it was off mic, you were saying, like, Oliver Queen's like hand-to-hand combat is really second to none except maybe Batman. Which is something I hadn't really thought about, And both.
That's why him and Black Canary get married.
Yeah. Well,
because the two of them are incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, the two of them could totally, crap on Batman.
Yeah, for sure.
Together in a fight against bats. They would crap on him.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's actually probably factual. I want to read, I put the feelers out on Twitter, and I was like, hey, this was on the Wannabe Critic Productions page, and I said, there's a fight about to break out as we record the next WWW. What do you think? Who would win? The greatest comic book archer or the master elf himself? Submit your answers down below, and we will include it in the show. Caleb Henley writes in and says, it's the immortal elf, right? Right? The final boss fight, hashtag, that's just his username, is the final boss fight, writes in and says, it's a no-brainer. Oliver all the way. To which I replied, give us something to work with. Why is it Oliver? Legolas is 5,000 years old and has superpowers. Oliver has technology that Legolas has never gone up against. Is that enough to make him the no-brainer winner? And then which he replied, he says, I was just typing this. I think strength of character is the most important thing, and I don't see much of that in Legolas, which is subjective, but yeah. In which he said, to add to this, Oliver survived Lian Yu and all its horrors. He defeated Ra's al Ghul and became him, then gave it away. He said there's strength, substance, and wisdom with this guy. It's not just about shooting fancy arrows. So we were kind of talking about this, and I read that to you, and you were like, but, and I made you hold on to it, and it's been probably the worst 10 minutes of your life. It was the subjectivity to his character, right? Strength of character.
Yeah.
And to which I said, and he gave me this, good research material. It was this Reddit thread of a lot of facts about the Tolkien universe and things like that, and one of the main things I saw in there is whenever Aragorn is instructing people, that would be the best candidates to go with Frodo. And before, he even puts Gimli above Legolas. Like, if Legolas was so good or had such a credibility to him, not to say that he doesn't, why would Aragorn not choose Legolas in the beginning? So I wanted to kind of lead with that because you seem to be pretty fired up about that, and I want to get your opinion.
The reason that Legolas is perceived as being less than because of that one scene, right, where Aragorn does put multiple other warriors ahead of Legolas, doesn't consider Legolas much, is because of who Legolas's dad is. We cannot forget who Legolas's dad is. One of the most well-known traitors in the history of Middle-earth. He betrayed people twice. He just turned tail and ran. No, thank you. Don't want any part of that. No one trusts the Mirkwood Elves. Ever. Everyone thinks they're crazy. And here comes the Prince of the Mirkwood Elves. No one knows anything about him. He barely leaves the forest. So that's why he got passed over. It's not because he was bad. It's not because he was less skillful than anybody else. It's because he's the son of the bat poop crazy king, and he just showed up here in, all leather armor with gold everywhere and this fancy bow and all this other stuff. That's why he was looked over originally.
Boom. The Tolkien nerd has shown his true colors, and I challenge anyone to write in and tell us that we're wrong. Because here's the thing: if I needed any contextual knowledge, guess what? I'm not going to a freaking Reddit thread for my research. I'm texting Tristan because Tristan is the definition of a book nerd. We were just talking about this off mic. Tristan can recall facts to mind about comic books, and I feel like that's why we have such great conversations. Is we both kind of have that factor of this is the fact, yada yada yada, and then it's like, but did you think about this? And then I'm like, but did you think about this? And it just turns into that thing of back and forth. And thank God we agree 9 times out of 10. You know what I mean?
Oh gosh, yeah, no. If it was 4 out of 10, it'd be rough.
It'd be hard. It'd be hard to have this show repeatedly. And I'm not one to say, that I'm not above admitting that I'm wrong or that I'm out of my element and whatever. But this feels pretty close to home. I know enough about both of these universes and both of these characters, but I still felt the need to kind of do my own research and make a pros and cons list for each one.
Sure.
And that's why I'm excited to kind of hear what your take is, as to who and of course, this is kind of the precursor, right? Like our personal pick of like, if I'm betting money, I'm betting money on this person, you know. And of course, at the end of the show, we'll say after we've had our discussion, we'll kind of say out of 100 times, like so and so wins X out of 100 times. But Tristan, who are you putting money on in this matchup?
I don't feel like it's fair that I have to go first.
I'll go first if you want me to.
Okay, yeah, you go first.
So I was kind of like you. Like, this one was tough for me because in my heart of hearts, right, if you ask me without any thought whatsoever, it's kind of like the Wanda discussion where I give it some thought and I kind of think about whatever. And you know, to Caleb's point, he said the immortal elf wins. An elf will never die of old age, but he can be slain in combat. He doesn't have an immortal soul that just lives on. I mean, he can be killed. Elves can be killed, as we saw, you know, at the Battle of Helm's Deep. You know, lots of elves got killed. But Legolas has superpowers, for lack of a better word. The biggest thing against Legolas is he is not equipped with someone to deal with someone that has so many extra things. You know, I think about it like, you remember the movie Avatar? Like these tall warriors, right? You know, going up against, you know, these tall native warriors on this planet, you know, with bows and arrows and all this other stuff, all this combat experience and combat knowledge, were able to take out these humans, you know, with these amazing guns. But whenever push came to shove, I would say in a lot of ways the humans won the battle, whereas, you know, what was the name?
Most of the time it was just stall tactics for the people.
Yeah, whatever I can't remember what their technical name was. The Omaticaya people.
The Na'vi.
Yeah, the Na'vi. So I mean, there was a lot of things that like kind of came to their aid, but in a one-on-one match, you know, there for a while it was looking pretty bad for the Na'vi people. And I think of that in terms of what would happen if an army of Oliver Queens went up against an army of Legolases. I think you could argue that Legolas is probably, call me crazy, actually I think this is factual, Legolas is a better archer on paper. I mean, he shot down a Nazgul, you know, as it was riding, did that thing. Not to say that Oliver Queen couldn't do that, but Legolas has 5,000 years of experience. Not only 5,000 years of experience, but he has superpowers. He has knowledge and has used that to his disposal to deal with X, Y, and Z for 5,000 years. Has not been killed for 5,000 years. Huge pro. That being said, if an army of Oliver Queens goes up an army of Legolases, it's over for the army of Legolases. Unfortunately. And in a one-on-one match, and this is where it gets kind of shaky, an army of Oliver Queens versus an army of Legolas is a much different conversation than just one-on-one. But I still, given any type of circumstance or giving, you know, the right type of situation, I still think there's a better chance of Oliver Queen winning this fight than Legolas, unfortunately. And I just think, you know, there's too many arrows at his disposal. I mean, I'm thinking like explosive arrows. Like, okay, you know, maybe Oliver Queen has done his research. Like, there were, in a perfect world, there would be some knowledge about, there would be some books written about this guy, Legolas, right? To where he would be able to research it. He would know his crap whenever he went up against Legolas in a perfect world, right? To where, because they both have to kind of be semi-aware of each other. Like, whatever, we'll paint the picture. Like, they saw each other on the field of battle and knew that they would reconvene at a later time, yada, yada, yada. If Oliver, it's like, okay, if Legolas is behind a tree and he can talk to trees and he knows what's going on and he knows what's whatever, even if that tree's saying like, yeah, there's something weird with this guy's arrows. If Oliver Queen fires an arrow in a precise place that we know he can do and that's explosive, Legolas is missing a head, you know, before he can even realize what's going on. So if I have to pick, and this hurts me, this hurts my nerd heart because I don't want this to be the case, but my God, I think it's Oliver Queen, man. Is the one who ends up winning. What do you think?
So check this out. I played the same game you did. Army of Oliver Queens versus Army of Legolases, right? But I took it further. All right, fine. One-on-one, fully equipped, all the arrows you could want. I don't know. That's a hard fight, right? So then I did one-on-one, fully equipped, no arrows. Who wins that fight?
Probably Oliver Queen.
Oliver Queen.
Yeah.
Right? One-on-one, no equipment whatsoever.
No equipment at all. Like, it's literally just hand to hand. Like, no blades, no nothing. Yeah, Oliver, for
no
sure.
Blades, no.
Stomps him out.
Oliver Queen. So that's what solved it for me. Fully equipped with arrows, his greatest, most positive strength, and you're going to say that he's not going to win that fight?
Yeah.
I disagree with you. I'm sorry.
And I mean,
Legolas is dirty.
Yeah.
I mean, he is a murderer. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this is by any means a 99 out of 100 times GA is winning this fight. Because Legolas is good. I mean, look what he did to the elephants.
That's exactly what I thought.
Every single war scene, he was always at the top of the list in terms of kill count.
Yeah. I mean,
wasn't even close.
And I think, that really goes to show, because we see Legolas in the movies, and you read about the way Tolkien described him, Tolkien loved Legolas, and he really valued that character as being excellent. But here's the thing with elves. Elves only work in large groups. Yep. They are, I mean, I would argue in a one-on-one, Aragorn would probably smoke Legolas.
Yeah, I can see that.
I mean,
I can see that.
Like totally. sword to sword, I think Aragorn wins, for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just even with the how fast Legolas can fire his arrows, because he can fire them at a pretty
Yeah, I mean, look at his quick draw.
Yeah,
look at his quick draw. Return of the King.
Flop, 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 flop. I mean, one right after the other. I just don't see a scenario in which Green Arrow, man, like, his equipment is so impressive. Like, it is so impressive, and like, there's just too many things. Let's say that it's an explosive arrow, and Legolas realizes, whatever, he's gonna be like, oh my god, like, what magic is this, type of mentality, and like, there's an explosion. Let's say he gets away. Oliver Queen realizes now he doesn't know what my arrows can do. Like, he doesn't even, I know what he can do, but he doesn't know what I can do. Like,
one flashbang arrow, just one flashbang arrow is all it would take.
Yeah, I mean,
Legolas would be dead. He has no defense against that. Elf or not, superpowers or not, he has nothing he can do against a flashbang.
Yeah, and I mean, and honestly, I think a flashbang would actually do more damage than good, because I mean, he has super heightened hearing, sight, all this other stuff. If anything, there are so many advantages that Green Arrow has over Legolas, and it kind of goes back to my thing. Legolas works best in a support role. That's why he was so effective in the Fellowship, because he was literally a supplement. If he ever had main character syndrome, he shouldn't have, because he was definitely the most stylistic, I think, but he was just an addition. He was not.
He was half of a team to back up one guy.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, him and Gimli together. That might. I mean, no, Gimli and Legolas against Green Arrow, still toast. I mean, like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got to think of it this way. If you think of that trio as a pie, Aragorn is 60% of that pie.
Totally.
And then Gimli and Legolas make up the other 40%.
Well, and no one ever talks.
No question in my mind.
No one ever talks about, who Aragorn, how old Aragorn even is. Like, the movies do.
He's super old.
Like, they do a horrible job of talking about, like, hey, like, Aragorn literally wears a ring of power. Like, he literally, like, he is super duper old. Like, he has one of the rings. He also, his ranger blood and, the blood of his ancestors or whatever, like, allow him to grow super old but still be super young.
I think it's like he dies at like 300 or something like that.
Yeah, super old, super duper old. Like, and it's not too incredibly long after the end of Return of the King. Like, it's like another 50 years or something like that, I think, that he dies.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember. Something like that. But the same thing kind of with Aragorn, though. Like, he's arguably one of the strongest warriors in Middle-earth because of his abilities as well. Still could outclass Legolas, I think.
Without question.
Yeah, I mean, but I, I've been talking a lot. I want to hear what you think. Like, what do you have to do you have anything to counter? Anything like, do we want to play devil's advocate a little bit? Or should we just skip on to like out of 100 times, like who wins?
That's not fair. Not that quickly.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
something you got to talk about with Legolas is he is so versatile. He's so incredibly versatile. His quick thinking ability is, I mean, let's be honest, Batman level. He really is. There's certain scenes within the movies and the books where something terrible is popping off, and Legolas just jumps into action, grabs a thing, slides that way, runs this way, jumps off the other thing, grabs the rope, pulls and shoots, hits it in the eye 3 times, whatever. So Legolas is so good. He is incredibly experienced in when it comes to fighting. So I mean, you can't take that away from the guy. That's why I wanted to say earlier that this is by no means a 90 out of 100 GA win.
Yeah.
By no means at all. I think that this at best is like a 70 out of 100 GA win.
That's
because Legolas is that good.
Yeah.
He's deadly.
Yeah, and I mean, I do think we kind of played into the cockiness of Thor whenever we were talking about our Thor versus Superman. Oliver Queen, for lack of a better word, he's kind of like the DC's version of Spider-Man in terms of like, or more like, I don't know, he's more Deadpool-ish actually, just kind of like with his humor, right?
A little bit of Tony Stark.
Yeah, kind of along those same lines, like not quite as like intense as Deadpool's humor can be, but like he's pretty cocky. And there has been many a time
and he's incredibly wealthy.
Yeah, I mean, there's been many a time where he's gotten himself into some trouble, though, because he was too cocky. And, I mean, that's been in the Justice League Unlimited cartoon. That's been in comics. I mean, that was an Injustice, for God's sakes. Like, he has shown his one of his biggest weaknesses in being too cocky. So I could totally see a scenario, right, where he pops off an arrow, it explodes, and he's like, oh, like, you're just going to make this easy for me, and just kind of charges in. That, I think, would be where the mistake would probably be. Because if we're in the woods, we're also not talking about, the elusive, like, illusions that can, the woods can play with elf magic and stuff like that. I mean, there's things that Legolas can do, or, that have been inferred that Legolas could probably do.
If Legolas gets to hunt him at any point, I don't think GA stands much of a chance.
And also, too, Legolas can make himself basically, if Legolas was able to escape that initial explosive blast or that initial whatever, preemptive attack by Green Arrow, because I truly think Green Arrow is making the first shot. I truly do.
Oh, yeah.
If it comes to that, Legolas, for lack of a better word, can disappear. I mean, he cannot be heard. He cannot, I mean, there's no hearing him. So I do see lots of scenarios where he can get the drop on
for sure
on GA.
Oh yeah,
for sure. But how often? I mean, Green Arrow isn't afraid to make the killing blow. You know what I mean? And I don't think he's going to be trying to scare away Legolas. I think he's going to come to that fight with an intent to kill. What do you think?
And the one big pro that Legolas has in his column, his one big strength is his archery ability, right? Well, that's GA's one big strength. You know what I mean? And not to say that in any way, shape, or form do they negate each other, but I'm just saying it has to be that much better, because you can't tell me that however quiet Legolas is, that Green Arrow won't hear an arrow slicing through the air coming towards him. He will.
Yeah.
He's trained with it his whole life. He knows what that sounds like.
Yeah.
And what's his name? Legolas brings nothing special to the table in terms of arrow construction or anything like that. It's just a steel-tipped arrow.
Yeah.
It flies true and it flies straight. It flies a little fast, but it's not anything.
The generous
crossbow.
I think
it's shooting at like 400 feet per second.
Yeah, and I think the generous thing to do with Legolas would be to like give him something like mithril arrows or flame arrows. I mean, lighting his arrows on fire. I mean, there's plenty of things that we could.
That's even louder.
But I mean, there's plenty of buffs we could try and give him to try and make a case for him to where it's like, oh well, what sorcery is this? Like, what is he doing? I think in terms of knowledge of archery and in terms of skill of archery, I truly think that Legolas probably is the better archer. But I don't think that makes up for the umptillion buffs and perks that GA has in his quiver. I mean, in his quiver alone, not even counting about, his utility belt. I mean, the
I mean,
suit
he's
that
got
he
a lot
wears,
of abilities for a regular guy. You know what I mean? Like, he is kind of a Batman-esque kind of person in that he's more than just a good face with a bow and arrow.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree.
He's not Hawkeye.
No, and that was like our initial thing was like, oh, Hawkeye versus Grant. It's like, dude, GA stomps Hawkeye into the ground like
all day long.
Yeah, so, unless you have more to say, I mean, I kind of said all I had. I kind of vomited it all out like right at the beginning of the show. Here I'll just read my pros and cons list. Okay, so for Legolas, Legolas's pro is in he has superpowers, for lack of a better word. He's in tune with the world, right? In tune with the earth, in tune with the trees, all this other stuff. He can kind of have foresight in a way because he's so in tune with his surroundings. Adaptability is another one. I wrote something here, but I can't read what I wrote. His weapons is he has his bow and arrow and his daggers.
Yep.
So those are
daggers are cool.
The daggers are cool.
He's not winning close range.
No, it's not happening. The biggest con is I just put modern tech ignorance. He doesn't know anything about modern technology. And then I just put hand-to-hand combat. Like, and you kind of answered my question on that. Like, does he know how to fight at all? I don't think so.
I mean, he's not bad. He's not bad. He's in multiple wars. He's fought in a lot of them. He's 5,000 years old. He's not a slouch when it comes to hand-to-hand combat by any means. But
no, like kind of having a mastery.
GA.
Yeah, I mean, but like kind of having a mastery over like what Oliver Queen has, right? I mean, it's kind of a
I mean, Batman beats Aragorn in a fist fight.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that would be
for sure.
I think
Batman
that would be
beats Aragorn in a fist fight, and Aragorn beats Legolas in a fist fight. So
there you have it. For Green Arrow, I put he's smart. He has high tech, hand to hand genius. Also has lots of experience. He has bow, blade, gadgets. That's the biggest thing I think in this fight is gadgets. Cons is he's never fought an elf before, so that
may not be entirely true, but okay.
Yeah, I don't know. That's
I'm not into the magic side of DC.
Yeah, that's questionable. He doesn't have any superpowers. It's a con, but then again, neither does Batman. And look he beat Superman many occasions.
He's Batman. Alfred beat Superman.
Here's one that's fun to play with though. GA will tire out. Legolas will not. Legolas does not get tired. So, if
Legolas figures that out,
if he figures that out, I mean, there could be a case made to where, he evades that initial explosion, becomes invisible. Basically, he can't be found. Oliver Queen's hunting him down. I mean, it goes to the point to where Legolas can make himself so light that he cannot be tracked. So that could play into it as well, potentially. Not to say that Oliver Queen's may not have some sort of gadget that allows him to read heat signature or whatever, but yet again, like Legolas can make his body temperature. Like he can basically.
That's to say though that this fight is in a forest.
Yeah,
what
true.
if this fight's in the Roman Colosseum?
Yeah, no, that's true. And that would be fun to like kind of. It's always fun to give both, right? The perfect scenario versus like who wins in the Colosseum, right? Or who wins in the Gulag. Because there's so many allowances that can be made, but I think it doesn't matter. What it boils down to is abilities and attributes. Who has the better setup? Who has the most pros?
Who's the most prepared?
Who has the most tools at their disposal to be the most prepared? Even then, usually it's not 100 out of 100. So, and
gadgets don't guarantee anything. It's just ability with gadgets.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. How good are you with that thing?
Yeah.
Samurai Jack, is just as good with his sword as. I would love to get a fight for him, by the way.
I would. Like Aragorn versus Samurai Jack. Like, ooh, that would be insane. Dude, Jack's done some pretty amazing things. Like,
oh yeah,
I mean,
Jack's hardcore.
I mean, he took
Jack
down,
can take a hit.
I mean, dude, he took down the Master of Darkness. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Jack can take a hit.
I want to get
Jack
a fight.
Gets hit
I
a
do
lot.
want to get a fight for him.
Pretty sweet.
I do want to get a fight for him at some point, but I've said all I've had to say, Tristan. Do you have anything that you want to add before we get into our out of 100?
No, I've got nothing. Let's do it. Let's cut the cheese on this.
I think you kind of hit it on the head, personally. 70 out of 100. I think GA wins. I think the scales are just too tipped in his favor for him to lose more than that. Is that how you feel too? I mean, has anything changed
100%,
for you?
100%. No, 70 out of 100, because that gives enough respect to the age of Legolas and the experience without, giving him too much. Because no matter how much experience he hasn't experienced a flashbang.
Yeah.
He hasn't experienced an incendiary round. He hasn't experienced Greek fire.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He hasn't experienced a net arrow.
And call me crazy, this isn't stuff that we've really had. I mean, there's been a handful of wars in 5,000 years that were on record in Tolkien chronology.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You had everything that took place within the Hobbit storyline, right? Book,
Mm-hmm.
and you kind of had the beginnings of Sauron kind of coming, back to power and doing his thing. And then you had like the big takeover, the big attempted takeover from Sauron and Saruman, literally a couple of 2,000 years later, if I'm not mistaken. There's been some wars and some battles, probably some skirmishes for Legolas, but I would say that Oliver Queen has probably done more in his 40 years of life and had to like take on more things in his 40 years of life than Legolas has had to deal with in his entire life.
I disagree vehemently.
Okay, then this is where your Tolkien knowledge will probably super. I'm just thinking like, okay, aliens, bad guys, like dimensional beings, like everything that's happened with the Justice League, like he's had to deal with Superman, Aquaman, like Batman. He's had to be a part of all these huge personalities. And not to say that, and that's the thing.
I'm not saying that Legolas is more. I'm not saying Legolas is more. I'm just saying that Legolas isn't zero. And one thing that Legolas has going for him that people don't know about, but will know about here pretty soon, because I've heard through the grapevine there's supposed to be a Lord of the Rings show on Prime.
Yeah,
I would just.
They've been, dude. It's
so
supposed to
good
be. It's going to be like the most expensive show ever made.
Oh yeah,
$500 million.
They're talking. They've talked it up so hard.
Yeah. Well, they've been working on it since 2016. So
the first season is supposedly Aragorn's life as a ranger, and that would take place right in the middle of the war with a country called Angmar. They talk about it a little bit in Hobbit movies, in the Hobbit books, and of course the books a lot. But that's where you'll see Legolas isn't a chump. He's gonna go ham in that war. You'll see that war with Angmar, because Mirkwood is in the top half of Tolkien's Middle Earth, and that's where Angmar is too. It's just on the other side. So Mirkwood is treated almost as a Gondor or a Rohan in that particular war.
Gotcha.
Which forces Legolas to assume more of a, like I said, like a Gondor or Rohan role in that fight.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm glad that you correct me, because I don't know all the ins and outs. It just, to me, I think the average person would be like, oh, what, he fought in those two big battles. This is all the things that GA has done. And yada yada yada. But yeah, no, I'll be interested to see like what happens in that show. I'm very anxious to see the show.
Gosh, I can't wait.
Yeah,
that'd be such a show if it's done right.
Yeah,
if it's done right, it's gonna be dope. But if not,
well, yeah, I think if you try it, and we'll talk more off mic about that.
Yeah.
But anyways, 70 out of 100 times, ladies and gentlemen.
7 out of 10.
GA takes the cake. But
sure,
as Tristan said, Legolas is no chump.
Legolas isn't a chump.
Tristan, I don't know how you feel, but I think I like whenever we pregame these episodes a little bit better. It was fun to like kind of go in blind, and we'll still do it every once in a while. But I'm just letting you know my personal feelings. I like it whenever we're like, okay, do you think about this thing? You like get it. It's like okay, cool. Let's go for it. You know what I mean?
Time out.
Yeah.
Freeze.
Yeah.
Wait. Let's do the intro. Let's go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Hype me up like a dog.
So, we were going to be talking about our next fight, ladies and gentlemen, and we're trying to work on a group battle, and of course, this group versus this group. You're more than welcome to give your recommendations or your matchups. We would love to hear.
We will do Justice Leagues versus Avengers if you want, but you'll be sorely disappointed.
That's what I would.
So just give us something more creative.
I was literally about to say that. I was like, we can do, and I was going to say the first thing that's going to come to your mind is Avengers versus Justice League. But, I mean, we all know the answer to that question.
And then Gabe and I, we were on the phone, off mic, obviously, the other day, just discussing something. And we had a great idea. And so I want to pitch this to the crowd and see what kind of response we get. The Teen Titans versus Class 1A from My Hero Academia.
And we're talking like the big 5 or 6 from Class 1A. Like Mignetta.
Yeah, we don't have to do the whole thing.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great idea, honestly. I mean, there's a case to be made across the board for everyone. Because, I mean, you think about like their main star Deku, like at least up to, and we have to preface this, up to season 3. Like Class 1A up to season 3, I would say. We can't give him two,
full-on Superman
Superman abilities, at that point. But, like, basically up to a certain point, Class 1A, I think, would be a good matchup for the Teen Titans. But if you have a different idea, make sure you email us at thewannabecollective at gmail.com. That's THEWANNABE collective at gmail. And you can tweet at us, too, and we would appreciate it. So there you have it. Tristan, it's been another successful Who Would Win in the books. I always enjoy these conversations, and I look forward to our next one in the next 3 months, whenever we get to do it. No, I'm just kidding. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you so much for tuning in. And Tristan, as usual, you don't want people to be able to find you, right?
No. Okay. Find me on here.
Yeah, find them on here. There you go.
Find me on here.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. And before we go, check this out. Say goodbye, Tristan.
Bye.
Well, whatever possessed you to check out any of the content that you saw today, I just want to say thank you so much for doing so. If you check the description down below, you'll see that there's a variety of different projects that I'm associated with. This is Wannabe Critic Productions after all. So I just wanted to say, if you enjoyed what you saw today, consider giving some of those other projects a chance as well. There's a lot of stuff that I'm a part of that that I do. If you were here for me or for someone else that you saw today, again, just thank you for checking it out, and I hope to see you again. But until next time, I'm Gabriel Fast, and I'll always be the Wannabe Critic.